Welcome, everybody. This is our fourth presentation for the Del Rio Trail Phase 2. Really excited to have Gerald Heffernon here with us today, who's going to be sharing with us his vision for a segment of the trail, in which he's created designs for a series of sculptures. My name is Donald Gensler. I run our Art and Public Places program here in the Office of Arts and Culture. Happy to be joined by our Del Rio Trail team, Beth Jones, Linda Jolly, and Justina Martino. So it's been really great working with this team through two phases of this Del Rio Trail project. It is state funded through the Clean Act grant and administered through our State Department of Transportation. We also work hand in hand with Public Works on the construction of the trail, but of course we are separate. We are just working primarily in terms of the artists and the kind of arts and culture work along the trail, which eventually will include a lot of interesting signage as well. One thing that we've seen is that everybody has a slightly different approach, and we're really happy that you're here with us today to sit in on Gerald Heffernon's design proposal. And the discussion will be being recorded and will be up on our YouTube Office of Arts and Culture YouTube channel. And we already have the first two recordings up there. So if you missed the first two, I encourage you to go check those out. Again, Office of Arts and Culture YouTube. You should see those videos without any problem. I'll be putting my email in the chat as well. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions that come up afterwards. And also put our website, delriotrailart.org, where we try to announce upcoming events and just try to, it's a website in progress that continues to be updated throughout the project. With that, I'd like to introduce a little, and I'm just going to ask that as we present, the Del Rio Trail is about 5 miles, almost 5 miles long. We're involving about 27 artists in this whole process. 7 of these artists are creating permanent work along the trail. Great. I just ask that we hold our questions and comments to the end, and if you can, just mute yourself while we're doing the presentation. And if you do have any comments or questions during the presentation, feel free to put those in the chat. We'll address those at the end as well.
Totally do that.
Let's see, Gerald Heffernon is, I'd like to give you a little background on Gerald. He recently completed a public art commission in Milpitas. And prior to that, one in Walnut Creek and San Jose, Whittier, California. Gerald has really been quite prolific in terms of his work that he's done in California and other places in the country. He's had solo exhibitions as well, most recently at Blue Line Gallery in Roseville. And he has been in a number of group exhibitions as well. He's in a few different book publications and continues to make work that is really, inspiring to many, but also, I think adds a bit of humor and levity in the work that he does. So it's been a real pleasure to work with Gerald. We, as a team, have met with Gerald multiple times on site and really enjoyed his very contemplative process in investigating the site and thinking about where the sculptures would maybe go best. We're still working out some of those details, but you'll have that experience today. So with that, Gerald, I'm going to leave it up to you. You could begin sharing your screen and share your kind of vision and design proposal with everybody.
All right. So the title page. First, I'm going to show you a.
You're not screen sharing just yet, Gerald. If you would go ahead and just hit that screen share button.
Oh, okay. I'm not screen sharing. Huh. Um, oh, there we go. And
Yeah, that's perfect. And under view, just go to that full screen mode all the way at the bottom. There you go. Enter full screen all the way, there we go. Perfect.
okay,
Great.
some reason it didn't want to snap that right into that mode.
Oh, no problem.
So I'm going to show you images of some past pieces that will help illustrate what the finished pieces will look like, but also how, based on the images I'm going to show you later of the new ones that are done in Photoshop, how they translate into the final piece that will be cast in bronze. And so here's that kind of a Photoshop proposal that I made to Walnut Creek. And it was a location right downtown, and I decided I wanted something leaning against this pole, and this is what I came up with. I'm not sure what the bull means, but neither is anyone else. This is in the complete form, installed in bronze, and so it's a different angle, but it's quite close to the Photoshop image. Here is a close-up of the head that shows the texture, that you'd expect to see, the texture of the fur and the suit coat and the gloss of the eye, etc. And so this piece was pretty popular, and after it got installed, it became sort of a landmark in downtown shopping district of Walnut Creek, and people often they put bowls of water down for the bulldog. Let me go back to that one, and then they'd often take selfies, lots of selfies. The people that the guy who was basically project manager, sent me many photos. Keep sending them of people with selfies of and in the middle of the pandemic, someone even crocheted custom protective masks for both the bull man and the bulldog. So it was, I'm pretty pleased with that and the location, because it's very casual and yet, prominent. Okay, then we're going to, this is a piece called Beaver Splash Dog Jump in San Jose at a place called Del Monte Park, which just beyond the trees has a creek. Los Gatos Creek runs through there. And it's, I wanted to make a reference to that, and also to the fact that just to the right, the direction the dog is jumping, there's a dog park. And so here's a close-up of the Beaver Splash. It's a stainless steel cutout, and with a pole extending from it. And on the end is a tennis ball. I mean, a bronze tennis ball. And then this is the dog leaping in the air. He's I believe 12 feet in the air for the ball. In this case, he's mounted in a kind of indirect way to the post, to the pole, because I wanted him to project out away from it and not look so much like he was right on the pole. And so I added another sort of element in back there to send it out, an arm of stainless steel. Okay. Here we are at the park. This is one element of my section of the trail. And it's my approach to this was to the fact that it was considered a wayfinding project. What was to try to relate all these pieces to the exact habitat that they were going to be installed in, and make that connection, even like some of the connections might be a bit sly or oblique, but then some people might get them right away and understand. They wouldn't get them unless they explored a little bit off the trail. I was going to talk also a little about the making of the bronzes. They range, the methods used are kind of a meeting of two worlds. One, bronze is very old. It's been done for thousands of years. But lately some high-tech elements have been added to it. So I will be sculpting these pieces about 1/2 to 1/3 size, and in the plasticine, a non-drying clay. And then they'll be scanned by a computer layer by layer, which is a fairly slow process, and then printed out on a 3D printer, but at full size. They'll be sized up to the final. And they're printed out in wax, so that now you don't have to do the first mold. You can just go straight to the investment mold because the wax, can be melted out of this heat-proof mold, and called the investment mold, and molten bronze poured in. And so it's kind of interesting. It's a little different than when I first started doing bronze casting. I was doing things with, I was sculpting full size, actually in water clay at first. Then someone would come out to my studio and make the mold because it's hard to move. And, and then went that usual process. So here's site 1. And this is the hummingbird hovering over some decorative grasses in the just past this dead end bulb out parking area, just as you're about to enter the park. And so it's it's mounted. I don't know if you can see if it's big enough, but this will be mounted on a pole. And either it will be painted in a camouflage way so that you don't automatically see it. And some angles you won't see it at all, depending on how tall the grasses are at that time. And or otherwise, I may use a mirror finish stainless steel pole that will be reflecting exactly the environment it's in, and hopefully disguising somewhat that aspect of it, so that you can get the illusion of a 3-foot long hummingbird hovering above these grasses. And here you can see in the elevation the dimensions and anyway. So hummingbirds, why did I choose a hummingbird? Well, hummingbirds are really amazing to me. I mean, they're not much bigger than many insects, but they're warm-blooded, and they have they're vertebrates. They have an internal skeleton, not an exoskeleton. And so inside there is a lot of the same body parts we have, or our dog has, or our horse has, or anything, just miniaturized to a tremendous degree. So there's a little heart in there, that has to work, is pumps blood through tiny veins, and there's lungs breathing, and you know the heart itself is quite amazing. It beats at about a little over 1,200 beats a minute, 1,260 beats a minute. Hummingbirds can fly about 35 miles an hour horizontally, but in case of the Anna's hummingbird, which this one is, the male, when he's displaying during breeding season, goes up 120 feet into the air and then dives down at 61 miles an hour, which if you base it on the body length of a creature, any creature that dives out of the air, that's the fastest on the planet. And so when we're lucky to have this particular hummingbird in our area, it makes this clicking sound too as it comes down, and then it goes back up and does it again, and it has to be built to sustain the tremendous pressure of that kind of a dive. So I just hope that this will cause some appreciation of hummingbirds, and you know, if they have gardens, they'll plant flowers and bushes that will help feed hummingbirds. Okay, site 2. This is the teddy bear and his pet dog. The context here is that this is sort of on the other end of Jensen Park, and it's quite near, it's just past the children's park, so where they have swings and slides, but they're all very small. It's made for quite young children. And so I thought, well, what would be a good fantasy for this? And I thinking about kids' books, it's really amazing how readily we accept the bizarre things that happen in them. They, you know, the kids can fly, there's all kinds, you know, ride on animals, do amazing things, and we don't necessarily think it's surreal. We just think it's, you know, kids' imagination. This is what delights them. So teddy bear seemed to be almost an icon of children, you know. And so this is going to be 5 feet tall, this teddy bear, but he's animated enough to you know, given a sentient life, that he can have a pet dog that will be a realistic looking Pomeranian. So it's a bit of a juxtaposition of the two. One, the fact that the teddy bear is a stuffed animal, or a stuffy as they call them now, and then the dog will be normal sized, will be the size of a Pomeranian usually is. So that kind of adds the giganticism aspect, brings it into more focus. And this will be mounted on just a pad in the grasses there. Site 3. This is the flying frog. The environment here is the besides these grasses and trees, on the other, just beyond those trees, there's a deep slope, and there's a dry creek there that is wet and runs in the wettest months of the year. But then, like this time of year, when it's 109, it's bone dry. So my notion was that part of the year it was decent habitat for amphibians or even turtles, but later on they need to get out of there and find someplace damp, because they can't dry out. They will die if they dry out. And so I was thinking about that migration they would have to make, and how far would they have to go to find, you know, the Sacramento River or a pond, you know, a man-made pond or a natural pond or a lake. And I don't know the answer to that, but I did decide that this particular frog should have the advantage of wings. in this case are rendered as butterfly wings. And so this means that when it gets too dry, the frog can fly away, not fly like a bird as I conceive of it, but can make big leaps and that are extended by flapping the wings so that it can go, huge distances without ever touching the ground and scraping its belly on dry dirt and rocks and stuff. So that's what this one is all about. Here's the elevation. It's going to be about 6 feet up in the ground, above the ground. And again, the pole I've rendered it with as if it's painted with in a camouflage way so that you don't notice the pole. But the grasses turned brown, so it's kind of hard to, unless I make a swiveling pole, one side is dry grass and one's green. It's a little difficult. So again, I'm thinking of a mirror finish stainless steel pole that will reflect except everything's around it, the grasses and all that. And from some angles, it should be effective. I mean, there'll be some where I suppose it's not as perfectly effective, but I think it'll work. I think it'll work well enough. So site 4. This is a giant cork, which puns on the grove of cork oaks that it sits in and in front of. There's a whole series of cork oaks, and I didn't even notice that they were cork oaks at first, but I took many trips out to this trail. I think about 5 with various people, including a couple of other artists and a person who is a plant expert, a land restoration expert. And she's the one who identified that these were cork oaks, because I was just sort of, in a daze looking at this whole mile of possible sites. So I decided to make a cork to show what uses cork oaks are put to when they cut off slabs of big thick slabs of the bark, which is many inches thick, but not all the way around. They don't girdle it. They just cut out a patch. And for that, from that they form these corks. And below it on the pole is a snake. I'm thinking of it as a gopher snake that twines like a corkscrew. So it kind of indicates the use that this cork is put through. So it's these different stages from cork oak to cork to opening the cork, opening the bottle of wine or whatever. And I'm thinking of it as a gopher snake because gopher snakes are, well, not only native here, and they're fairly large, but they're non-venomous and they're considered actually beneficial. So I thought they would, if anyone has a snake phobia, they wouldn't see it that way. This one is 7 feet at the top of the cork, and the cork and the snake each will be roughly 3 feet. I'll play a little with the proportions when I do the sculpting. So those are all the locations. I was going to say this is just the time schedule, but I'll go back to this. It's more interesting to look at. In thinking about all these as they match up with the habitat, with the environment that they're in, I was, even though they don't make an obvious progression, I felt that they did yield a progression in the fact that they each referred to the changes of landscape along the trail, and therefore, you know, made that connection with the trail. By the way, I want to say thanks. I forgot to say it at the beginning for that I'm allowed to be one of the artists in this very unique project. Very unique in my experience, at least, and you know, I can't think of any others that I've even heard of that are anything like it, where it goes along a whole trail. But I'm sure there were some, but I don't know. Cork oaks, by the way, I love cork oaks. I used to see bunch of them every day when I went to my studio on Olive Drive in Davis. And there was one that was magnificent, my favorite tree in the whole world. That they get huge, magnificent, with beautiful, huge limbs, but very gracefully placed. So you could imagine a leopard hanging off of a limb of one of them or something like that. And the bark, its skin is so thick that it's, you know, it's like the elephant of trees or something. And they're just so beautiful. And probably, you know, in the future, we won't even know what a cork is. I mean, kids won't. They'll say, "Dad, what's a cork?" And when they see this piece, and because everything will be screw tops or some other, you know, other device, which may or may not be good for the cork oaks. But anyway, that's just a little environmental insight. Okay, going to timeline schedule. I'm hoping that, you know, when we finish these things, it will be going straight to a fabricating contract and begin sculpting, you know, August 1st. And I probably would be, even if we hadn't finished it. But and then I'm roughly thinking, if I looked at it all as a group, I would see the sculpting completed by February 1st and get it to the foundry so that they could work on it from February to June. It'd probably be more like the end of February. But as I understand it, they need about 10 to 12 weeks to do all four of them. And of course, installation has to be before June 30th, or I believe we're incarcerated or something. And it's a very severe penalty for not making it on time. But I've always installed things on time, so I'm always waiting for the contractors. So yeah, but then the intermediate goals, mini goals, were to, you know, sculpture 1 would be done on October 1st, 2 by November 1st, and so on down. And then I get the engineering done in, you know, any time in there. I'll probably might work on 2 of the sculptures at one time, so that they'll probably, maybe I'll have 2 done a little later than the first date, and then I'll deliver them both to the foundry so that they can get a head start and have these. I don't want them to be too rushed, you know, so that they can be working on 1 or 2 of them before the last 2 or 3 come in. And let's see, yeah, that's pretty much all I really needed to tell you about the foundry work and the process. So if anyone has any questions about any of the images they've seen or the concepts, I'm here to answer.
That's great, Gerald. Thank you so much. Could you go ahead and stop the screen share for a moment?
All right.
It'll make it a little easier for me to field questions. thanks for the presentation. I really appreciate it. I think you were very thorough in each stage of that. So thanks. We may go back, I may ask you to screen share again, so keep that on your desktop.
Okay.
So at this point, what I'd like to do is really open up the conversation to some discussion. And I will, I'm actually going to start with the first question that I saw in the chat. I'm going to actually share my screen for a second here. Can't let Gerald have all the fun. Are we seeing that? Can you see that, Gerald?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is Charlie Jensen Park. Just so you guys know, this is basically where all of his sculptures would be installed. So I don't know if it was entirely clear from what you saw, but right here is kind of where the hummingbird would be. And we'll work directly with our parks department. The hummingbird would be right over top of these grasses. Right back here, so in view of this playground that Gerald quite appropriately referred to as kind of a smaller kid playground, and I think you're exactly right, Gerald. There's a certain kind of age that this playground is really going to satisfy. So Gerald's sculpture will be very much visible from the playground. However, we did go through a lot of conversation that we didn't want the sculpture to become playground equipment. So it is also very much separated from the playground. So kids will be able to see it, but it's not like right here within the playground grounds. I'm sure there may be a little bit of selfies at your sculptures anyway, Gerald. And then what we can't see here, but as you enter the existing path, the trail itself comes down here, if you can see my cursor, and kind of connects with this existing path. The other sculptures are further down the path. But I think something that's really important, and so everything in Gerald's section is very much close to this Charlie Jensen Park. And we did that in our conversations with him a little bit on purpose because the sculptures are small and very detailed. We really, had conversations with Gerald about, did we want to kind of keep them together? And it made a lot of sense for them to be kind of around the Charlie Jensen area. So that was the thinking in terms of the locations. We'll be working with our public works team on the other, installs, and with parks and the ones that's right next to Charlie Jensen Park. So that's just a little bit of an explanation there, and would be happy to field any additional questions or comments that folks have. And then I've always got some questions. So Gerald, I'll jump in while we wait for some folks to think if they have any questions. You sculpt these first in clay.
Yes.
Right? Does that clay, is it kind of a plasticine clay, or is it
Yes.
something that's it's a plasticine clay?
Plasticine. Yeah, there's about 25 different versions of plasticine with other brand names, but yeah, you can get whatever you want.
Okay. Might be and then are those destroyed in the kind of the wax loss process or no?
Yeah, they I imagine are, well, actually they may not be destroyed in this process because they're scanned.
Oh, they're scanned with the 3D scanner.
It used to be that people would be, slopping urethane rubber onto them,
right,
and putting a mold release onto it first, and so they'd sometimes fall apart in pulling the molds apart. But in this case, it's not. It shouldn't be harmed very much at all. I mean, I don't know if there might be a couple of holes poked in it to register,
Well, the reason I ask is because I'm just thinking at some point, as people are developing their designs more fully, we did a really wonderful, and I'll give a little plug here. This is last week, or the next week will be the final week of our show at Twisted Track Gallery, 12th and R Street. So if you haven't seen that show, I encourage you to go by and see that. But it might be interesting to do a show of the design elements that go into all of these different projects. And I think your kind of smaller plasticine sculptures could be really wonderful for people to see, and then see photos of the installed work. I think something that I'd really like to point out to the folks here, if you've joined us for some of the other presentations, is that, Gerald is very much working on these in the studio, very, very kind of meticulously developing these sculptures by hand. In terms of how he fabricates himself. Gerald, could you show real quick like, for example, the hummingbird? Could you just go ahead and do a quick screen share?
Okay. Oh, there we go.
There you go. So just go to the hummingbird one, for example.
Yeah.
And, the amount of detail here, I just want to point this out to everybody because it's not necessarily, intuitive. Gerald has a process where he has these created cast in bronze, and then Gerald, you paint them as well, right?
Yeah, I do as much as patina as can be done in a stable color. And you can do a lot of different colors, but a lot of them only last 2 years or something.
Yeah.
Start to go brown. So in the case of the hummingbird, this reflective iridescent looking thing will be painted with an automotive paint. It's a catalyzed urethane paint, the same thing that they paint all cars with. And
yeah,
it's a very, very, it's very permanent.
Great. Yeah, no, and the reason I bring that up is just because there's just a level of detail here in terms of the way the work is kind of modulated, and the carving and all of that is different from some of the other work that we've seen on the trails, especially some of the work that has been very kind of environmentally focused. Not that there's no detailing, but I just think that there's a different sense of craft here. And for me, just helping working with these artists and seeing them develop their projects, I just think as a visitor to the park, it'll be really nice to be going down the trail and have those different experiences where, like yesterday we saw Atlas Lab and their section of the trail that will be these granaries that are, kind of towers with, kind of demonstrating these different types of granaries. But then also to come upon Gerald's section that has these kind of very handmade, more traditional sculpture, figurative sculpture. So it's just a nice range of work. Gerald, I think that you fit into that, and you kind of provide your voice, your creative voice here, which is of course very different from another artist's creative voice. So I just wanted to point that out. We could stop the share, but just wanted to point out the level of craft and detail that comes out in your work.
Yeah, I don't exactly think of myself as a figurative artist in that I don't draw from models or anything like that. And I don't do very many humans.
but figurative in the sense that it's plastic, right? So it's this kind of notion of the
representational.
Yeah.
And so I think of myself as being more of a conceptual artist. I happen to get my conceptions across by making realistic sculptures that fool the mind, you know.
Right.
So because they're realistic, then you go, oh, that's real, but that can't be happening, you know.
So there's a kind of trompe l'oeil aspect to
Yes,
the work
yeah,
that you're creating.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me let Joe. Joe, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I have a comment to you, Donald. Being part of these conversations this past week, and you just kind of mentioned something that just triggered my mind as like a parks advocate and things that we do install at these parks places and all this great work that's going to be alongside the trail. Is there, you probably have an answer already, and I'm ignorant about it. Is there some sort of like QR code is going to be installed next to these pieces so folks can on their phones, you know, it goes to the SAC Art website saying, hey, this is the artist, this is, you know, the reason is behind these art pieces, right? Like, it's one thing to see it live, and it's another like, hey, for more info, here's this, QR code that lives on the city side, right? Like, because that's always that's where does this content live, right? Like, and obviously the city could handle some of that. So that's more of a question to you as all these pieces, you know, are being installed, you know, that for that more info part of it. Because just imagine walking that floor, like how you said, yesterday's presentation, today's presentation at Charlie Jensen, right? Like you're going to go into a different experience each section of the trail. So yeah, that's just an overall comment. And I know there's a cost associated with, you know, housing information like that. And that's always, you know, who pays for it. But like, you know, hearing art pieces installed, like, you know, like at Reichmuth, you know, they had that fire engine equipment, but there's no, for more info, the type of person, like I know there's tech savvy folks who can do that. So it's just more of a comment question, but.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. Thank you for giving me that opportunity to kind of share that with folks. So the quick answer is yes, there is. And the more in-depth answer is there'll be a number of things going on. So as far as QR codes, we do plan to have QR codes. We're looking at some different options regarding QR codes. We do have an existing website. So the easiest fix will be some QR codes that will link to delriotrailart.org. So if any of you haven't gone on that website, I encourage you to do so. I just put it in the chat. It is a living website, so it is changing and evolving. The second thing is, Joe, again, you've given me the great opportunity to do this. I mentioned in the chat that we'll be make sure to include some of Gerald's statements about the individual pieces, because like he mentioned, he kind of considers himself a conceptual artist. So his thought process is very important in the work. We have set aside funds for a whole campaign of signage up and down the park. And I also have been recently talking with Public Works, and we're going to very much integrate together both with the signage related to the art and also signage related to history along the trail and ecology along the trail. So stay tuned. I'm actually super excited about this aspect of this overall project. We are my office, the Office of Arts and Culture, that I'm part of in our Art and Public Places program. Another division within our department is the History Center. And so we're actively working with our History Center to kind of develop appropriate signage so that people can really learn about some of the railroad history here, history of the indigenous communities, history of some of this ecology that's happening along the trail. Like Gerald said, there's that whole grove that he's kind of playing with the cork, this whole grove of cork oaks. And I would love the opportunity to have some additional signage where people could learn about, you know, some of the plants and native or different plant and animal life that's in this area. So absolutely, we'll have signage that will be out there on site directly for you to see and read, and then also probably some QR codes. And we are also working with an app developer where we will have some of the work that was created in phase 1, especially like some of the music, where you'll be able to QR code to a sign that will bring you to an app that will allow you to, let's say, play Josiah Catalan's music while you're biking down the trail, or listen to Jillian Van Ness's songs about the trail, maybe while you're out there with your kids. So all of that is the plan over the next year. We've got our work cut out for us, but I increasingly see this as not just an opportunity to place artwork, but literally an opportunity for a destination site for Sacramento, and a kind of an outdoor museum and learning area for everybody in Sacramento. So thank you for that, Joe, and look forward to involving you and the Parks Department in that process.
Thank you for the update. Then, like I said, apologies for me not knowing that plan of action. And then you said app, and I know when I go to Disneyland with my son, you know how like it geotags, you're in Star Wars land and the music plays off the app, like stuff like that. So there you go. You can send notes that way, right? Your phase 1, phase 2 artists geotagged and all that stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. So all of that, I think there's still more work to do, and yeah, no apologies. I mean, we had a vision for this, but the more we get into it, the more it started to solidify, and I personally realized how vital and important. Honestly, it's a sticking point with our whole program. I don't think we have nearly enough signage and plaques for the artwork, and we're working on that right now for our whole art and public places program. So I'm hoping in the next couple of years, there'll be a really distinct change you'll start to see. But especially for this project, I think signage will be a wonderful, wonderful addition. And I know personally, I love when I go to especially contemporary museums, I want to read about what the artists were thinking about, and even museums with more historic work, I want to read and learn a little bit more about it. So I think it's a great opportunity, and we're looking forward to making that happen. Beth, I think I saw your hand up.
Oh, I guess I just wanted to say that one of the things or qualities of Gerald's work that I do really love is what I would call narrative or storytelling. And I think that there are other artists who are doing things on the trail that kind of refer to that, but Gerald's really, I think, celebrates it, and especially that it is in a park where a lot of people walk their doggies, kids play, that kind of thing. It's a little different kind of a part of the trail and a different environment, and it's kind of so beautifully site specific, I think, in that way.
Absolutely. And we have the opportunity, because we visited that site a number of times. There's a nice little cul-de-sac where you could go literally just park your car and walk and see Gerald's this installation of work. So it'll be a really nice, and then I think, yeah, there are definitely kids and families that go there quite often.
Right.
Any other comments or questions? Great. So Gerald, I think you did a wonderful job in your presentation. We look forward to seeing that work evolve. Thank you. And yeah, thumbs up to snaps all around to Gerald for putting that together. It's been a process really where he's really been, and I think this conversation is right. It's really Gerald, your work, although you bring a kind of conceptual approach to it, is also a kind of all ages type work that I think, even the little ones will have their interpretation and experience with, and adults will have a whole nother kind of series of interpretations and kind of understand your tongue-in-cheek corkscrew idea with the snake and all that. I really, one of the things I think is really lovely about the work is it brings a smile see your face. And then, but then you can kind of read deeper in it. We had this conversation a little bit about it yesterday, about that artwork can have, you know, artwork that has multiple levels of interpretation is really so strong and so vibrant when it has, it's not one, it's not didactic. It doesn't just say this is what it has to mean. It gives you this kind of idea that you can kind of pull out all layers of meaning throughout the work. And I love the idea that just by sculpting a hummingbird, albeit a much larger hummingbird than real life, but by sculpting that hummingbird, you bring attention to that species, and that you're very intentional and specific about the species of hummingbird that you're creating there that is native to our area. And that may very well prompt folks to think a little bit more about, you know, the natural wildlife and habitat around them. So thank you so much for that. I want to again thank everybody for taking the time to come today. I know there's 7 of these presentations, many of your faces I'm seeing each day. So thank you for taking the time to be part of this discussion and dialogue. And again, thanks to our team here, Beth and Linda, for helping to make that this process work. I hope you will all join us for next week. We'll have another series of presentations. We have 3 more presentations next week. And on Monday will be Stephen Glassman, whose installation will be close to the kind of intersection of the trail and Riverside Boulevard. So I hope you'll take the time to join us for that presentation next week, again, 12 p.m. Using the exact same link. And if you came late or didn't catch the entire presentation today, this presentation will probably be up by Monday next week of Gerald's work. And the past presentations are already up on our Office of Arts and Culture YouTube channel. And you can Google that, or we've also, I think Justina put the link here in the chat. I also put my email in the chat, and just a reminder that you can find out more about the Del Rio Trail artwork on delriotrailart.org. Again, thanks everybody for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time, and have a wonderful weekend. Stay cool, everybody.
Thank you.